So Ed Sheeran dropped his new album on Friday, and I wasn't particularly interested in checking it out, just because I wasn't really feeling the singles too much. But thanks to TikTok's blatantly obvious eavesdropping, I'm pretty sure I was just talking to a friend and said off a whim. So, hear the new Ed Sheeran song? And BAM!
I'm gonna release my 6th album.
This is me after hearing some tracks.
I made 5 EPs.
Okay, fine, I'll make a video on him. God! You guys are all probably like,
What? Where's the Reputation video? What is this?
It's coming, man, but I posted nothing but Taylor Swift content for the last month. And I know me and Taylor are boys, but like, I'm just not a Swiftie like that, so it's a little much. So we're taking a little break from Taylor Swift today to talk about Taylor Swift's Ginger English Dude version. Honestly, to me, Ed Sheeran was always one of those artists that's just kind of there. Like, I know some of his songs, I like some of them, but these days I don't really ever go out of my way to listen to them. But I still just get a really heavy dose of his music because it plays everywhere. Like BTS, Taylor Swift, they'll have their moments. But Equals dropped 2 years ago, and I could still probably walk into any shopping mall, Starbucks, or Outback Steakhouse and expect to hear that little bum, 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 bum. But in spite of all of that popularity, I still don't really know any Ed Sheeran stans. So the objectives for today's video are to listen to every Ed Sheeran album, effectively rank, review, and synopsize every album, and lastly, figure out what his deal is. Because I feel like everyone I've talked to or like been in contact with has either not liked his music at all, or just like some of his songs, but they're not really like a fan. So how is he so popular? You know, before Shivers, it was I Don't Care. Before I Don't Care, it was Shape of You. It's just been a never-ending conveyor belt of Ed Sheeran songs that take over America.
And it's dark in a cold December, but I got you to keep me warm.
Edward Christopher Sheeran, MBE. Age 32, sex and gender male, height 5'8", shrimp. And he is also obviously from across the pond, love. The MBE in his name stands for the Most Excellent Order of the British Empire. You basically just get a tiny medal for making cool shit, and you can add some letters in the end of your name. I'm pretty sure it's like a step below being named a Sir. Like, you know, there's Sir Patrick Stewart, Sir Elton John, but I'm not really sure. If you know, correct me in the comments. Since being signed to Atlantic Records in 2011, Ed Sheeran has released 5 to 7 albums, depending on how you look at it. He obviously has the 5 math albums, or as I like to call them, Math-Ed-matics. But then there's number 6 Collaborations Project, which I kind of saw as an EP, just because number 5 Collaborations Project was an EP. But I guess this one technically qualifies as an album because it's longer. I don't really know. And he also has 5, which is a compilation of the 5 EPs that he made before getting signed. But Wiki says that he had 9 EPs before getting signed, and I looked some of them up and I couldn't even find them on Spotify, so I don't really know if they exist. God, okay. For the sake of the video, I'm going to be listening to the 5 math albums and number 6 Collaborations Project, because those are the 6 albums that I assume Ed is referencing in his TikTok. As much as I want to listen to all of his projects, like I said, some of them aren't even on Spotify, and it just becomes too confusing to draw the line between the ones that he still cares about and the ones that he put in rice. So these 6 should do for now. All of them add up to a total of 95 songs and 349 minutes, or 5 hours and 49 minutes of music, which is only a smidge longer than Ariana's discography, so nothing crazy. Anyways, I'm obviously listening to all the deluxe editions of Multiply, Divide, and Subtract, but do they really count as deluxe editions if you can't find the standard ones on Spotify? I don't know. Anyways, with all that out of the way, let's get listening, losers. So I listened to Plus yesterday at the gym. I actually really liked it. It feels the most intimate, I think. And it also just does a lot with a little. I know I say that a lot, but yeah. Look at this fucking Ed Sheeran outfit, bro. Plain black t-shirt and cargo pants. Like, dude, that is so Sheeran. Plus is kind of goated, man. Like, I always knew the A-Team and Lego House slapped, but so many of these other songs are pretty solid. I guess this is an acoustic album, but it doesn't feel like it limits itself to being just acoustic instruments, which I like, you know? It's nothing crazy. It's only like a few electric guitar parts here and there. Not enough things that these songs couldn't be replicated with just an acoustic guitar and that gosh darn fucking loop pedal that he loves so much. A lot of the songs on this album in particular are basically just 4-bar loops with parts being added or removed throughout. So I get how Ed landed on that format for his concerts, but it's just kind of funny that he's playing to like however many 80,000 people in a stadium and he just comes on stage like, cheers mate, 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 pick up cheers mate, cheers mate, and Jill the Lego. And I feel like that whole thing would just get kind of old after a few songs, but back to what I was saying. I've never listened to this album before, so it was really interesting to see where it all started. You know, this dropped in 2011, so I was only like 8 years old. I was still on my Jonas Brothers Big Time Rush phase, but I really liked it, you know, especially thinking about how big he's become since then. I love how much this album prioritizes the music, and it tells these stories that are like simple but still very deep. Here's my top 5 songs. Lego House is fucking S tier, bro. It's like the perfect representation of not what I think he does best, but what I like best that he does, if that makes sense. I'm pretty sure a lot of people think that this album is his best, and I kind of see why they think that. So much of this album feels like the perfect storm. In 2011, you know, everyone was concerned with revolutionizing music and putting new sounds into the mix. And here comes this little English guy with just an acoustic guitar, reminding us that music at the end of the day really isn't about any of the technical stuff, which kind of renders my channel completely useless, but music is about the feeling that it can give you when you listen to it. And the feeling I get when listening to this album is just unmatched, you know? It's like I'm sitting in Joey and Chandler's chairs. Just cranked out Multiply at the gym today. It was pretty good. You know, it was actually a lot more Ed Sheeran rapping than I was expecting. Obviously, like Thinking Out Loud, Photograph, those are great songs. There's some other ones like Bloodstream, Sing, you know, they're good. This album made me confront an inner conflict that I've been facing for a long time. As long as I can remember, to be honest. And it's whether or not I like Ed Sheeran's rapping. It's definitely probably the most divisive aspect to his music, and I get why people don't like it, you know, sometimes it's a little corny. But this is the album where he raps the most, I think. And the conclusion that I've drawn is that I also don't like it. But I don't really care, you know? I think it works sometimes on songs like Sing or Don't. I actually really like the verse on Sing. It's a good contrast. For me, what it boils down to is if I'm looking for someone to rap, there's just like a long list of artists that I'd go to before Ed, you know what I mean? And something about rapping with just an acoustic guitar as the backing just feels off. It feels like he's trying a little too hard to merge these two worlds that should not be together, in my opinion. Like when I hear a song as sweet and light and fun as Lego House on the same album as Said I'm Up and Coming Like I'm Fucking in an Elevator, it's kind of weird, man. Like, it's just off. I'm up and coming like I'm fucking in an elevator. That is just absurd. But aside from the rapping, I think that this is a really great album. In a lot of ways, it just expands on most of the things that Plus did well. And it's also just much bigger in scale and polish, which would normally be a good thing. But for me, that takes away the charm that Plus had. So it's a toss-up. I don't really know which one I like better. Here's my top 5. I'm sorry, but Thinking Out Loud is just such a beautiful song, man. I don't care if putting it at number 1 makes me a basic bitch, and you're a basic bitch. This album also has a lot more pop appeal, but I think it contrasts that pretty well with other songs that feel like a bonus track off of Plus, you know, like Shirt Sleeve. That song slaps, bro. I just don't know which one I like better, man. Multiply, I feel like, has more songs that I would like, but again, that charm, you know, that X factor that Plus has is just unmatched. So I'm just gonna leave that to editor Jason. How you doing, man? Good luck. So I finished Divide. It was actually pretty solid. I think for the most part, all of these songs held up. I'm not a big Shape of You guy, but it's whatever. I have such a vivid recollection of one Saturday afternoon in 2017 when my mom took me to Barnes & Noble's and we stumbled across the Divide CD, so we bought it and we listened to the whole thing in the car, just the two of us. I think we were eating ice cream. It's a core memory for me. It was really nice. Believe it or not, Divide was the first album that I ever listened to front to back, and I was obsessed at the time. So because of that, Divide's always gonna have a pretty special place in my heart. Who knew that 6 years later I'd be making videos talking about listening to albums from front to back for all you people to watch? Like, this is where it all started. And I think a lot of the songs do still hold up. If you can look past how overplayed all the songs were when they came out, Castle on the Hill slaps, Happier's a banger, Perfect is perfect, but I don't like Shape of You. I liked it when it came out, but now it's just not it, man. There's also very little rapping on this album, which I love, obviously. But more than that, it just feels like a masterclass in acoustic pop songwriting. Again, I don't think it's all technically acoustic, just like Plus and Multiply, but compared to the rest of the pop music coming out at the time, it is. So I'm just gonna keep referring to his albums as acoustic albums. I mean, I'm pretty sure that's what he does too. This is also the only album out of all of his albums that I've listened to from start to finish before this video, and some of the songs just didn't hit as hard as I remembered. You know, Galway Girls, a little bit cringe, you know, the violin, it's not working for me. But I think he makes up for it with Barcelona. That shit is so hype, bro. When he starts speaking Spanish at the end, I don't know what he's saying, but that's just gas. Most of my top 5 was pretty easy, but I struggled with number 1 because I didn't know whether to give it to Happier or Perfect. Perfect seems like the obvious choice, but Happier just, something about that song, the second verse, when he goes, nursing an empty bottle. Oh god, I'm sorry you had to listen. That was really bad. For that travesty alone, I think I'll just give it to Perfect. Similar to what Red did for Taylor Swift, I think this album puts Ed at a crossroads. You've established a house sound, you have your hits, but are you gonna keep chasing that pop success, or are you gonna pertain to what you know you're good at? And this next project made his decision pretty clear. So, I returned from the gym. This is why I'm not wearing a shirt, I'm not the type of guy that walks around shirtless. I have a mirror in my room, so if I did that, I'd probably just feel depressed all the time. But the album was kind of mid, bro. I'm not gonna lie. I remember a lot of these songs being super popular when they came out. I don't know if it didn't age well or they're just super shallow, and I don't like them. Well, this album is a change for sure. Ed looked at all his previous projects and said, what am I doing, bro? I don't even like math. Alright, I forgot he's English, so he'll probably be like, what the bloody hell am I doing, mate? I sucked at math in secondary school. Secondary school. School. Whatever. There's also no acoustic guitar in sight. It's mostly basic pop music, and I don't think that's inherently a bad thing. I just don't like these songs, man. All the songs are so basic, and there's not many deeper meanings at all. And it doesn't feel like Ed Sheeran. I mean, it really isn't. Basically every feature on this album absolutely skadooches on his parts, and it just highlights how mid he is at singing. Like, he's good at singing, but he's not a good singer, there's a difference. For what it's worth, I think some of the songs here I don't mind, the one with Stormzy is kind of fun, and Beautiful People slapped when it came out, but I'm just now realizing how mean it is. The song is saying, beautiful people, that's not who we are. So you're calling your girl chopped? Like, that's kind of fucked up. Anyways, I think if there's one takeaway from this project, it's that Ed chooses to make acoustic pop music. And thank God he does, but he's also capable of making generic, bland, boring pop music too. And while I don't really get the whole math thing, I like the idea of that series of albums being like this sacred, personal thing to him. Across all 5 of them, there's not a single feature. And if and when he wants to work with other artists, he can do it in a separate project. But it leads to this album being an overload of artists, and it's a fucking headache, to be honest. But I'm always gonna support artists trying new things, as much as I liked all the albums up to this point. It's not fun if all of them are good, right? So fine, Ed, take the time to try new things, take the time to work with other artists, but you can't make me like it. Okay, I'm not gonna lie, I don't mind this album. Like, it's not great, it's not good, it's not mid, but it's not shit. Considering it came after No 6 Co, it doesn't feel too out of left field, but stacked up against the rest of the Math albums, what the fuck, dude? Like, this shit is completely different, and worse, to be honest. In this album, Ed just kind of feels like a shell of himself, A song like Overpass Graffiti, I feel like is trying to hit a similar note to something like Castle on the Hill. Same thing with Visiting Hours and Supermarket Flowers, but they're just missing the heart that those songs had that made them so good. But I wouldn't go as far as to say that it makes them shit songs. It's just, they're a lot worse in comparison. Like, these songs aren't so bad that they're difficult to listen to, but it's like they're too easy to listen to. I have to admit though, I legitimately fuck with Shivers. Like, I'm sorry, man. I know that song gets so much hate for some reason, but to me, it fucking hits, bro. When the strings start playing at the beginning, it feels like I've been transported into a music video. Like, yeah, it's overplayed, but who cares? When I worked at Outback, they had that song on rotation like every hour, which after doing some quick plussing and multiplying would mean that I listened to it about 35 times a week. And I still never got tired of that shit. It's bouncy as hell. His vocals also feel kind of lifeless on this album. Like, he was never the most passionate singer, but all the other albums have their moments, Like, when you listen to Perfect, it feels like he's singing from the heart. This album just feels like he's doing office karaoke. So yeah, Equals is very different. Yeah, it's not that good. It's definitely my least favorite of the Math series, but Shivers gets a pass. And honestly, him having that phase of his career where he sold out just makes Subtract that much more satisfying when you get to it. So I'm okay with it. Like I said earlier, it's not fun if all of them are good. And if this album is his worst, I think he has a pretty good track record. I'd probably give it like a 4, maybe. I don't know. Got out of class early today, and I'm about to watch Ed Sheeran, The Sum of It All. 4-part documentary about, I think, either the creation of Subtract the album or just the sum of it all, you know? It's like a little pun because he does the math thing. I really like this series. I definitely recommend checking it out, even if you're not a big fan of his work. It was fun and also really sentimental, which made me appreciate Subtract more as an album. I like Ed, man. He's pretty chill. He doesn't really seem like he let the fame get to his head at all, and I really respect how seriously he takes the music side of his career. You know, he's clearly much less concerned with his public image. But as for the album, Subtract is sad as shit, man. I don't want to get into too many details, but essentially Ed wrote this album as a way of coping with the loss of his best friend, and his wife was also diagnosed with cancer that week, so it's just a very low point for him. But what I appreciate about the album is that it isn't emo. Like, through all the loss and sad topics that it touches on, Ed still has a relatively uplifting perspective on life. Each of these songs are sad, but end on a positive note, which is the proper way to grieve. It's not too self-indulgent, which I think also shows a lot about Ed's character. And the taglines for all these songs are so good, you know? They're not too profound that it feels pretentious. They say that all scars heal, but I know maybe I won't, but the waves won't break my boat. Like, that shit is beautiful, man. This album just makes you feel feelings, dude. It's so sad. I used to think that the whole math thing was kind of dumb. Like, it felt like a lazy attempt to add cohesion to these albums that are pretty similar, but also kind of different, especially later on. In the doc, Ed kind of gives a vague explanation behind the whole thing, but as I thought about it more, I came up with my own explanations for the album titles that I think connects it to their individual identities regarding their place in Ed's career. Ed said that Plus is made up of the songs that didn't make his EPs, but you could also say that this album was the addition of a more rhythmic acoustic pop sound into a music scene that was so focused on futuristic techno sounds. He was adding something to the table that wasn't crazy experimental by any means, but it was just a breath of fresh air at the time. Multiply is taking what Plus does and expanding upon it, but it's also the album that continued to increase Ed's popularity, multiplying his reach, his fan base, and the amount of hits that he had. Now, Ed explained Divide as being half R&B and half acoustic pop, so the genre is divided down the middle. But like I said earlier, this album served as a crossroads for him. Either accept Divide as his peak popularity and pertain to his acoustic sound, or make more pop hits riding the wave of notoriety that Divide brought him. And Equals is pretty simply the result of that choice. While it has some acoustic aspects to it, Bad Habits is basically a club song, and I can pretty confidently say that this album was structured from the beginning to be something that saw commercial success and wasn't really personal to him. But, like Ed also said in the documentary, success in his career didn't end up making his life feel fulfilled. So when you subtract all of the Spotify streams, all the sold out stadiums and the fans, what are you left with? Just Ed and his acoustic guitar. A return to roots. Obviously, you could also connect Subtract to being about loss, which the album is definitely about that, but I think this whole thing kind of made sense. If I had to say why I think he's so famous, I mean, aside from writing the 2 greatest wedding songs of all time, shit, that might be it.
His love is a blaze, a soft flames in the start.
Nah, I'm just kidding. Look, man, at the end of the day, he makes songs that are easy to listen to, easy to understand, easy to like, and he has an understated charm to him. He's not the best singer, he's not the best looking guy, but he works with what he's got. He's like the Adam Sandler of the music industry, and who doesn't like Adam Sandler? And that charm was particularly prominent in his earlier stuff, but it's reflected in everything about him. Always playing the acoustic guitar with the loop station on some fucking youth group worship leader shit at a literal fucking stadium. And look at some of the other biggest pop stars in the world and how they dress at their concerts. And look at good old Teddy. It's honestly hilarious, man. I mean, even his hair is a mess. Like, how could you not love this guy? But it is kind of funny how liking Ed Sheeran became such a plague recently, when back in high school, literally everyone loved him. But I think it boils down to 2 things, you know. One, when Divide came out, he wasn't like that guy yet. Like, people knew who he was, but that album is pretty much what cemented him as one of the biggest stars around. But now that he's held that spotlight for so many years, people just don't like popular things, you know. It's super common. And it's usually subconscious, you know. They might chalk it up to the music feeling boring now, or maybe their music taste has just matured. But we all know you're just fighting every bone in your body not to be basic, which is fine. It's whatever. And the other Ed Sheeran haters are probably the ones that really liked his older stuff and just don't like No 6 Co and Equals, which is fair. I mean, plenty of artists are guilty of chasing success, but taking the chance to look at his entire discography really helped me realize that, yeah, he had a phase, but the acoustic stuff is his best stuff. And I personally feel like we just shouldn't put that down because some of his more recent things aren't as good. But my hope with Subtract is that it regrounds him and reunite some of his old listeners with his music like it did for me. And hopefully, as Ed continues to make music moving forward, he can experiment a little more tastefully. Here's my top 15 songs. I'm sorry if they're basic choices, but I mean, songs are popular for a reason. I obviously have my playlist linked in the description. You should check it out. And here is my album ranking. It's tough, man. I really wish that subtract were higher, but, you know, plus is kind of like lightning in a bottle, and divide and multiply, that's like peak Ed Sheeran. And then the bottom two are no-brainers, obviously. Comment below your favorite Ed Sheeran album and or song, as well as any artists you want to see me do this series with next. Guys, I promise that I will get to Lana Del Rey. But I listened to her most recent album, and I'm just not the biggest fan of it. So if you could suggest a couple songs of hers that would help me have a better understanding of her sound before I dive into 9 fucking full-length albums, that would be very much appreciated. Anyways, please like this video. It helps out a lot. All of the earnings from this video will also be put towards the Taylor Swift concert fund, of course. I'm glad I did this video, man. It was nice to break it up. I was really tired of Taylor Swift, to be honest. And I like Ed. You know, I really think I'm becoming like a fan. I don't know. Like, I'm a fan of his work, but I'm not an Ed Sheeran fan. It's like that.
And shout out to my brother for making those really funny drawings and animations. I'll link his channel in the description. You should definitely go check it out. He makes like vlogs, but then cuts to those animations within the vlogs. It's good content. I think you guys will like it. And yeah, thanks for letting me take a break from Taylor Swift for a week. I know a lot of you probably don't even like Ed Sheeran that much. The poll I made was pretty split, but I encourage you guys to check it out. You know, if you're not the biggest fan but you're watching this video, go check out my playlist. I think if you don't like any of the songs on that, then you probably won't like his stuff. But I went in not really expecting too much, and I actually thoroughly enjoyed this whole album listening thing. So maybe you guys will too.
Anyways, I'll see you guys next week.
Love the blaze, salt lanes, start the stage, but for no, but something to drink, maybe something to smoke. Say what?